How can a great bassist like Paul McCartney or Pino Palladino or Nate Watts play a pentatonic lick and it sound totally pro, but when a beginner uses a pentatonic, it can sound basic? Even if they're using solid rhythm and decent tone? The truth is, pros will use the exact same notes as beginners when they play pentatonics, but the way pros approach it is completely different. So today I want to show you what they often do and give you 2 easy ways to start doing it for yourself. This video is sponsored by my Critical Mass Bassline Challenge. If you are in a bassline rut, this challenge will help you get unstuck and get you creating catchy, melodic basslines fast. Link is in the description. Now, in order to understand the difference between the way beginners play the pentatonic versus the pros, you have to understand something like the humble omelette. Now, a beginner cook might make an omelette with some beaten eggs, a bit of salt, and some butter in the pan. Minimum number of ingredients. It's simple, it'll get you by, it's relatively easy. But a pro chef making the same omelette might add some chives or some cheese or some caramelized onions or spinach or paprika or whatever it happens to be, and they would do it very intentionally, right? Using the pentatonic scale is kind of the same thing. Often beginners will only use a single pentatonic shape, like maybe this one. Or maybe they'd use this one. Now, these are correct. They'll get you through with the right pentatonic notes, but pro bassists approach the pentatonic more like a pro chef. They'll often use more than just a single shape, and then the real pro move is that they intentionally slip and slide between the different shapes rather than staying in one position. So for example, they might go. In fact, just check out Pino Palladino doing this exact thing with John Mayer. Here he's playing over an A major chord, and he's starting in that kind of bass A major pentatonic shape. But he's not staying there the entire time, and he's not using all those notes in that shape, because in fact, almost immediately, he kind of moves up to the shape above it. And again, he's not playing the entire shape here. Like, he technically could play all these notes, but he doesn't do that either. He plays. And then when he gets to this point, he moves up again to play that high C sharp up there. Now, him slipping between all 3 of these shapes, it gives the line movement, it gives variation, and he keeps things super, super musical. The line itself, 100% pentatonic, but he's sprinkling some tarragon on his omelette. He's using spring onions. It's not just that he's staying inside one shape and only using eggs, for example. It's not just him though. Check out Paul McCartney on Don't Let Me Down. This one is just straight up E major pentatonic scale, but he's not using that shape that contains all the notes in one place. Technically, he could have played that, but he doesn't do that. Instead, he starts here and then immediately goes to the shape above by sliding here and then coming down. Yeah, so adding in that little slide and coming down that way, it just feels a little bit better under the fingers than kind of doing this. Same notes, but it just feels a little bit different, and it makes all the difference, right? Or one last example. When Nate Watts plays Isn't She Lovely with Stevie Wonder, he could play the lick at the end in a single position. He could go. But instead, what he actually plays is this. Yeah, with that little shift in there. Because it feels better physically, but it also helps the line feel better musically as well. Now, if you want the easiest way to start pulling this kind of move off for yourself, then I want to show you 2 diagonal pentatonic ideas that are super easy to get started with and get used all the time. In fact, this first one is the same diagonal kind of shape from both the Stevie Wonder and the Paul McCartney examples. And to get started, you just pick any key and just play the root note of it on the A string. So let's do it in the key of C. So we're just going to play this C on the A string on the 3rd fret. Now, technically, we could play all the notes of C major pentatonic in position right here, and then these 2 notes down here. But with this kind of diagonal pentatonic, that's not usually what you see pro bassists do, right? They'll often use the notes just on the E and A strings, which which gives us this nice little box with the root right here. And instead of continuing up to the D string to play that note right there, we're going to move up 2 frets on the 7th fret to get that E right there. And that little slide up, that's the key here, because look where you are now. From this position, you can take the exact same box shape that we played down here and shift it kind of diagonally up here. So you end up with this. The same thing as it was down here is up here, and we've just connected it with that little slide right there. Can you also see the Isn't She Lovely lick in there? It's a straight up pentatonic played diagonally across the fretboard, rather than a beginner who might just play kind of horizontally across the fretboard. But when you get here, you do have options above that C. We just played that D as well, but you can also slide up again and play another E after that on top. And that's sliding from one position here, here, and then also coming back down. That can be really fun. It can sound really good. And in context, you might use this to play, a fill or something. So let's try that over just a C chord. And let's try use that diagonal pentatonic. Here we go. Oh, okay. Now notice I'm not using every single note of the diagonal pentatonic every single time, but I think I did use all of them eventually at some point in that line as well. It can be super, super fun, and it can be really, really cool as well. Now, our second way of using this diagonal pentatonic idea is with the root on the E string. And if you know the shape that we just played, it's super, super easy, because the shape from that starting point from the A string is exactly the same from the E string. So this idea, we just play that same shape starting there, just like that. And then on top of that, we can just play the same last 2 notes on the G string as we played on the D string. So in this case, it was 12th and 14th fret. So we just play 12th and 14th fret on the G string here. That's in this case a G and an A. And that's the version starting on the E string. And in fact, this is exactly what Pino Palladino used in that very first example, but of course he started in A. Now he didn't use the extra 2 notes on the G string, in this case these ones, but you don't necessarily have to if you don't want to or need to. If you wanted to, you might use them maybe something like this. 3, 3, One thing with this one is that if you start up higher on the neck, by the time you get to the notes on the G string, you're kind of very much out of the realm of bass line territory. It can still work, but you might just have to be a little bit careful that the bottom doesn't kind of drop out of the whole song if you're using this particular diagonal shape. But this kind of thinking, choosing when to move around the neck, when to stay put, and how to keep things musical, that is actually a big part of what I dive into in my critical mass bassline challenge. These kind of diagonal pentatonic ideas are adapted from one of the daily bassline models inside the challenge, and the whole point is to get you to break out of a bassline rut where everything you come up with starts to sound a little bit the same. So if you want to start creating your own original, melodic, catchy bass lines that go beyond just roots, thirds, and fifths, check out the link in the description. Now, everything we've done so far has been over a C major chord. Now, obviously, if you play all these shapes in other keys, they're going to work really well. But where it can also get really, really cool is when you realize all these diagonal pentatonic ideas, they can work over the relative minor chord or key as well. In this case, because the key of C major and the key of A minor share the exact same notes, you can use the exact same ideas over, for example, an A minor chord, and that would also work. The only thing you'd have to change is just resolve the idea back to an A rather than a C, and you might do something like this. Here's an A minor version. That was a bit rough. Something like that is going to work really well as well. Now, these diagonal pentatonic shapes, they are a great way to add some kind of melodic flair to a line. But that doesn't mean much if you can't first create really solid functional bass lines. And for me, one of the best bassists in the world for mixing the functional with the melodic is Paul McCartney. You already saw it in the Don't Let Me Down bass line, how he uses those kind of diagonal pentatonics, but check out this video if you want to see how his playing really evolved from honestly pretty rudimentary root and fifth lines to some of the most kind of iconic and melodic bass lines ever written, including what else Paul added to his playing and how you can do the same.